Shalom, my brothers and sisters who are in the body of YAHUWAH HaMashiach. And this is a continuation of Yahuwah's calendar, and this is part 15. And this is dealing with how to calculate your seasons. So the title of this lesson is the calculations of the season. So as you can see here, I came up with a little simple formula to help you with your future record keeping of the lunar solar calendar that is created by the Most High and which can be observed by the heavens. Okay? But first, I want to do a quick review from the previous video about the new moon, as well as you can see how it lines up with the seasons along with the solar year. So in the previous video, we was talking about the solar seasons. The solar year will give you when the seasons begin and end. When the seasons begin and end. So as you see, this is the lunar solar calendar for the year 2015 to 2016. And we'll start with the first month. As you can see here, I don't have it listed because it was in the previous month. But the solar year ended on March the 20th. Okay, so it's the day before that. Because that's when the Winter Equinox fell on that day, which is also known as the Spring Equinox. So the day after the Spring Equinox is the first day of spring, which fell on March the 21st. Now, in the year of 2015 to 2016, on March the 21st is when the lunar year and the solar year started together. Keep in mind, the moon will vary from year to year. It may start with the solar year, or it may start after the solar year. And that's because of what's written in the book of Enoch. Because Enoch even says, and this is in chapter 74, verse 4, it says, "And in certain months she alters her settings, and in certain months she pursues her own particular course." And in this particular chapter, he's talking about the moon here. So the moon followed its own particular course. Okay, so this is why we have a variation between the sun and the moon. So as you can see here, for the lunar year, the first month, which we call Abib, fell in the spring season. It started right on time. Okay. Now remember, because the lunar year has lesser days than the solar year, you would see slight variations of when the lunar months start and when you compare it to the seasons. As we can see in the next page, this is dealing with the fourth month of 2015. And what you see here, this is the Summer Solstice. So this is the last day of spring. And on the fifth day of the fourth month, this is the first day of summer. So you can see here that the fourth month of the new moon, most of it is still in the summertime. And that was the book of Jubilees, chapter 6 was talking about. If we go to the next sheet, in the seventh month, which is 2015, we have what we call the Fall Equinox. And that is the last day of summer. So on the 11th day of the seventh month, we have the first day of fall to start, and you can see that the Feast of Tabernacles started right on time in the fall season. Okay? And then on the 10th month, we have what we call the Winter Solstice. That is the last day of fall. So on the 12th day of the 10th month, we will have the first day of winter. And you can see it still fell in the right season, that 10th month. Oh, one more thing I need to show you. And we'll talk about the 13th month in another video. But first, I need for you to understand the seasons. Because if you don't understand when the seasons begin and end, and when the solar year begin and end, then you're not going to understand the 13th month and why we have a 13th month. But in the year of 2015 through 2016, we had a 13th month. And the Spring Equinox fell on the 11th day of Adar 2. So that's the last day of winter and also the last day of the solar year. So the solar year began on the 12th day of Adar 2. Okay, so it began within that 13th month, but we can't have a new lunar year before the solar year. It has to be with the solar year or after. So we'll talk more about that later on. Okay, again, this is the start of spring right here. So when we get to the month of Abib in 2016, this whole month still fall in the spring season, and you can see the quarter phases of the moon, half, full, half, and then dark moon, and so forth. Okay, so now we're going to go back to our lesson here. We're going to talk about how can you count or figure out, when your seasons begin and end. Now, with the Gregorian calendar, it can get kind of confusing, so you have to keep the two separate. So what I learned is you have to look at what day in March is your first day when the solar year starts. So we'll look at our calendar from this year. In Adar 2, it started on the 12th day. So from the 12th to the 30th, we're looking at a total of 19 days. Okay? So once you figure out how many days in March that is included in that solar year, you write that down. So we'll put 19 here. And then I added up the rest of the days in the other months of the Gregorian calendar. So when there's not a leap year in the Gregorian calendar, you will have 334 days. And this is before March. And then if you have a leap day in the month of February, then you'll have 335 days. And then when you figure out what is your spring equinox for the next year, and most of the time it has been fall between on March 20 or 21st, then you're right in 20 days. So for example, this was on the 19th. The first day of the solar year was on the 12th day of the lunar month, and it was about 19 days. You add it here, plus your 334 days, because this year is not leap. And then you'll find your equinox for the new year. Okay, and which would probably be March 20th. And you add all them together, and that would give you the total number of days for your solar year. For example, February has 29 days in every 4 years. That's on the Gregorian calendar. So remember that. It fell on 2016, 2020, and 2024, and etc. Now, you definitely want to use a raw Israel information on when is the equinox and when is the solstice. So, for example, you would go to timeanddate.com. Make sure you have it for Arad Israel, and you can see the listing for the March equinox, June, September, and December for several years. Now, what I did, I wrote all of them out, and I made sure I highlighted the year 2000, because I know in February 2000, instead of 28 days, there's 29, and you'll see why that'd be very important. So I'm just going down so you can see. It gives you the list of the day when your spring equinox will start, which is March 21st or sometime March 20. But I do notice a pattern here, and the pattern is you got 1, 2, 3. Let's see here. Let me find one. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can see here there's a pattern going on here, and we'll talk about that pattern later on. Now, how I figure out my solar year, how many days, I go from 1999 to 2000. So in 1999, on the 21st was the spring equinox. So I start counting the day starting on March the 22nd. Because remember, the equinox is the end of the solar year. So you want to count from March the 22nd up to March the 20th. To give you a total days for the solar year. And because I have 2000 highlighted, I know that February has 29 days instead of 28 days. Okay. So I know from the 22nd to the from the 22nd to the 31st is 10 days. And I had a leap year, 10 plus 335, and then plus 20 will give me 365 days. So I'm going to have to cut this video short so I can go more in details again on how we figure out the total number of days for the solar year. Click on part 16 for the continuation of the solar year and seasons calculations.